Hey everybody, and welcome. In today's video, we are going to see how to prep up Max when you first install it, so it has more or less all of your needed changes done to it, how to set up all of your materials, and we're also going to see how to set up our shortcuts and how to install a few of the very needed scripts that, if you ask me, should come pre-packed with Max. All right, so let's start off with the easiest things, and that is how to set up our default switch elements for Max. So first I'm going to do is I'm going to press my M button to open up my slate editor. And if you've watched me do any of my previous videos, what you're going to notice is that I rarely do use the slate material editor in 3ds Max. So what I do is the first thing that I do is I go inside mode and I switch over to compact material editor. And this is where usually people ask me the first question. And that is, I've seen this thing many times in the comment section. And they ask me, how come when they open up their Max, it looks like this? All of the materials they have set up here are actual Max materials, opposed to the materials that I have on my side, which are colored spheres, and they are Vray materials. Well, in order to get that, what you need to do is go over into your Customize menu, and from here you scroll down to Custom UI and Default Switcher option. From here, when you open it up, you're gonna have some options that you can change on the side, which will change up your initial settings for the tools. Now, in order to have Vray, you have to have Vray installed. This is the 2018 version of Max, so it does have Art installed, but I want to have max.vray as my initial settings for tool options. You can even choose to change your UI scheme, but I'm just going to leave it as a default and click on Set. As soon as I click on this thing, it's going to take a few seconds, and then it's going to give you this option where it says the default settings will take effect next time you restart 3ds Max. So I'm going to click OK, and now I'm going to close Max and reopen it again. So here we are back with Max restarted. And now what you're going to notice is when I open up my material editor by pressing M, what has changed is now I have all of these material editor balls that have been colored, and they're all Vray materials opposed to being the standard material. So that is exactly how you get to change your materials from every time you start Max to be actual Vray materials. All right, now for the next thing is basically you need to know that the UI for Max is very customizable. You can change your layout here. So you can go over to your plus in the option, configure viewports. And from here you have this layout button. In the layout, you can choose however you want your layout to be created. You can just have one. You can split it in two. You can have one bigger and 3 smaller viewports. So this is very, very dependent on how you want to work. Or if you don't want to choose just that, you can just go inside the middle here and manually change the size for this thing to whatever works for you. And if you want to just go back again, you can just go to configure viewports. In the layout, choose this thing and click OK. It's going to rescale it back if it was changed, but since this is actually at 4, it didn't change much, so I'm going to give it back like so. Next thing is the actual menus on the side. Now here, generally when I do my work, what I do is I get over it at the edge here. I click and drag it outwards. In 2018, this will basically make this thing that bigger until it gets to a point where it splits in two, which is about here. There. Now when this happens is when I create something, let's just simply create one teapot here. There we go. And when I go inside my modifier, if I have more options, they're gonna go down to about here, and then they will transfer over here. So I'm gonna have double the size of option. And if you have a bigger screen and you can allow yourself to have even more of these menus, all you can do is just click here and continue dragging until you get a third line. So now I'm gonna have 3 rows of options when I'm modeling, which can be very helpful if you have, like I said, a very big screen. If not, just get it to a point where it's like just 2. I'm actually using just 2 when I'm working. So with that, we have now 2 rows of options. While we're here, I'm actually going to address another question I've had people ask me multiple times, and that is, when I'm modeling, I have some of my modifiers preset over here as individual buttons, and that is actually very, very easy to do. All you got to do is go over to your configure modifier sets, and from here you click on this button where it says show buttons. What it will do, it will open up those buttons, but since it comes pre-packed with what Max just gets as default options, this might not be the ideal option for you guys, so you might want to change this. And the way to change it is, again, you click over here and you click on configure modifier sets. What you do here is now you have all of those modifiers in the list, and from here you can change them to whatever you want. And here where it says total buttons, you can basically select how many of these buttons you want to have. In my case, I generally have 8 when I'm modeling, but if I do something that's more specific, I could increase this number or change the modifiers. But the way that I have them set up is, in the first one I have the edit poly, because this is more or less one of the most used ones. Then the second most used thing is my turbo smooth, so I can just get over here and press T until I scroll down to turbo smooth, put it in the second one. Underneath I have shell, so just keep pressing the S until you get to what you're looking for. So shell, there you go, shell underneath the edit poly. I have the push next to shell, and like I said, this is very individual. You might not want to have it like this, but I'm just showing you how I use what I have, or what works best for me. Next here is symmetry, and then we have the UVW unwrap UVW. Then I have the UV map, so UV map, and underneath here I have the UVW map clear, which is the option where you just want to remove any UV information. And when you go OK, you're gonna have all of this here. Now, in some cases when this thing happens, don't worry about it. As soon as you restart Max, this thing or this button is going to be where it's supposed to be. Another thing that I want to address before I go on and explain something else is, again, this is a very, very personal choice, so you might not want to do this, but the thing is, ever since I think it was Max 2015 or 2014, when you hover above something, get this yellow outline, and when you select something, that yellow outline becomes a blue outline, which is kind of interesting idea because it can show you what you have selected on a scene that's a very, very dense scene with a lot of elements in it. But for me, this thing annoys me, so what I do is I generally always turn it off. The way to turn it off is you go over to customize and you click on preferences. So when you go over here inside the viewport option, you have this option where it says selection preview highlights. When you click that thing off and click OK, that will get rid of that outline that goes across the whole thing. So Like I said, this is a very individual option. It doesn't make or break your 3ds Max experience, but if it were up to me, I'd remove it. So I'm going to leave this thing and move on to the next thing, and that is how to set up your shortcuts. Making your own shortcuts for Macs can be very beneficial to your workflow, especially if you know what you're going to be doing. And if you're doing a repetitive task in which you're only modeling, or you're only unwrapping, or maybe you're doing a mix of both, you can really make your work a bit faster by applying or customizing your shortcuts. So how the way to do this thing is you go over to customize user interface, click here, and in a second or two, as soon as the options open up, you're going to be greeted by this menu. Now the way to do this is over here you have all of those actions that you can do in 3ds Max. Then you have a hotkey and assign to. Now all of these are actually even separated by categories, so you can go all commands, or if you're looking for something in particular, you can go in and choose it from this list over here. Now in this case, the thing that I want to do first is show the end result. Show end result is the button where you create anything, for example like this, and you go shell, and this is the show end result button. When you click this thing, for example, if I go teapot and turn it on or off, it's going to show you how the end result looks like. For me, this button is, so I can do over here, go do action, and just start typing show end result. You have this thing option over here. So what you want to do is I go over to hotkey and shift plus the bracket underneath the escape. I have no idea how this thing is called, so this thing is not assigned. It will give you assigned to nothing, so you can click on assign, and now when you click on over here and you click that shortcut, it should work. But in this case, I'm guessing it's this option over here. So hotkey assign, it will shift it over here, and now there we go. We should click on save, and when you click on the save option, it will give you a save shortcut file as. So you can save it anywhere just by clicking on save, and that thing will save whatever changes you did. So when you close this thing now and go back to teapot, if I click shift plus my shortcut, you're gonna notice that this thing is turned on and off. So very helpful thing when you're modeling. So next thing what I want to do is I want to add another shortcut for the cut tool. So for the cut is basically when I'm in my edit poly and I want to go from one of these vertices to another one, or just from one to anywhere, I want to cut. And the way to do it is you go over to your action and you just write down cut. And what you're going to notice right here is that by default, Max has Alt plus C set up as cut. So if I go here and now press Alt plus C, you're going to notice that this thing just turned on. So if I click here, I can start cutting in anywhere I want, like that. So that is one of the other shortcuts that I use that actually come pre-packed with 3ds Max. And now another one is that when I have two of these vertices selected, I want to connect both of these together. And in order to find that thing, what I want to do is go over to my action and just find the connect. Okay, go up a bit. So let's all right, so we have multiple connects, and what we're looking for is connect edge poly or connect vertex poly. When I'm over here, I'm going to I'll go to my hotkey, and now just instead of using shift and the grave key, I want to actually use alt and grave key. It says it's unassigned, so I'm going to assign it, save it again on the same file that we previously did. I'm going to close this, and now when I have both of these selected, I can use them to instantly make those types of connections. And now the last of the most useful options that I usually use, and this is the one that usually I get most of the questions about, and that is when I go ahead and add in extra loops without actually changing anything. And that is thanks to one of the options that are inside our modeling ribbon called Swift Loop. So when you click here, you can see that I can add in an entire loop anywhere I want by just one click of the button. So this option is called Swift Loop. So again, let's go to Customize User Interface, and in here add in or find the action for the Swift Loop. So come over here and Swift and get Swift Loop. The hotkey for this thing, I have the number 0 on my keypad, so I'm going to assign it. You can change it to wherever works best for you. For me, this thing has been going on for ages, or more or less as long as I can remember, so I'm using that one. I'm going to close it. So now when I click it, I can just put in any geometry anywhere I want it very quickly. All right, so I'm going to close this. And more or less, that is the easiest way to change your shortcuts. And the last thing I actually want to cover in this video is how to install a very simple script and how to install one of the most used script, which is a loop regularizer. So the first thing that I'm going to show you is how to install a script called TextTools, which is the most used script when it gets down to UVW unwrapping. So TextTools can be downloaded from ScriptSpot. I can leave a link in the comments. So as you can see over here, you can see an overview of what all of this what all of these options are and how they can be used. It's a very powerful tool. And when you scroll down, you have the place where you can download the script into an MZP format. And once you download that thing, what is going to happen, you're going to put it in a folder like this. And from here, you can just click and drag it onto your 3ds Max window. Once you put it in here, it's going to give you an option. You can do a quick install or uninstall. I want to click on quick install, and everything is going to be finished. No fuss, no muss. You can just close this thing and you have the 4.10 version installed. But here's the thing though. Now when you close this thing, how do you get it back? Well, in order to get it back, you need to go open up your Unwrap UVW and open up a UV editor. Now by default, this thing will not show up. So you need to create a button which will call to, that script up. And the way to create a button in your user interface is, again, you go over to customize user interface. And when you're in here, what you want to do is first you're gonna go down to toolbars, and in here you're gonna go click on new, and you can call this whatever you want. In this case, I'm going to just call it TextTools. Click OK. Now you can select it from this list over here, and you can choose to hide it or unhide it. What happens is you see this thing that's like floating around right now. You can click and dock it in here or pretty much anywhere you want. So now what can happen is you go over in where it says your action, and from here you want to find the text tools. So let's try typing in text, and you have this thing says right here, text tools. This was installed by the script, so now I can just click on it and drag it in here, and it's going to create this button over here. I'm going to close this, and now every time I click it, it's going to open up my text tool option or my text tool window. Now what I can do is when I scroll above it, I can right click and edit the button appearance. This will allow me to change whatever text comes up when I go over it, the tooltip, or I can even change the image button. But in this case, when I scroll over it, it says text tools. The icon that comes with it says text tools, so I'm going to leave it as it is. So I'm actually happy with how this thing looks. And now the last thing that I want to do is I want to install the loop regularizer. And what the loop regularizer does is it's a very nifty script, because what it does, it can take any geometry that you might have. For example, let's add in edit poly with a couple of edges with the swift loop like this. 1, 2, 3. Give it a few more. There we go. We have a highly irregular shape now. So I'm going to select these 4 polygons and delete them. Now, what the regularizer does, it can select all of the edges on a collapsed editable poly. So I'm going to right click, convert to an editable poly. It can select all of those edges, right click, and you, when you choose the regularize option, it will make it into a flat and perfect circle. But in order for that option to appear, what we need to do is download the loop regularizer. And again, since it's an MZP file, all you got to do is just click and drag it inside your 3ds Max. Once we just did this, we're not going to change anything. We don't have to activate it or whatever. Just right click, and now you have the option of regularize. You click this thing, and as you can see, now we have the perfect circle for this geometry, and we can continue modeling to pretty much whatever we need it, like so. And with all of that set up, you should be more or less okay for starting to work with 3ds Max in a manner that's going to be very similar to what I do, or what you're going to see me do in rest of the videos on my channel. So I hope you guys had fun and you managed to learn or pick up some new tricks. If you do have any questions, leave them below. I will meet you in the comment section of the video as always. If you enjoyed the video, then please click the like button, and if you're not subscribed, now is a great time to do so. As always, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye-bye.